like a formal debate basically, but like since it's just like a 10 to 20 minutes conversation, I can just do this as like an informal conversation, and then maybe in the future when we're both free at the same time, we can do like a formal debate on stage on the same topic. Okay?
Yeah, yeah, that works.
Yeah. So the thing we are talking about was whether or not moral anti-realism is true. I'm pretty sure that was like the thing we agreed on. I'm willing to defend moral realism. I have the arguments which establishes that moral realism is true. But do you
Yeah.
have any arguments which establishes moral anti-realism being true, or is it just a case where is it just agnostic on the debate proposition?
Yeah, so I think before I say that, I want to be clear that well, I think that moral realism is false. I think that that's true. And by
Mm.
moral realism, I mean specifically the claim that the following two claims. One, cognitivism,
Okay.
which is just a claim that, moral statements, there are such things and they can be true or false. And then
Mm-hmm.
the stance independent thesis, which is that there's at least some of them which are true, or at least one of them which is true. And the truth of that, the moral statement isn't dependent upon the attitudes or stances of people, either as individuals or collectives. So I think that
Okay.
that's false. And I have a sort of, like, I would say, inference to the best explanation. And it's like, and I use that term kind of loosely. So it's not like a robust notion about what IBE is. I just have like a sort of loose way of talking about that. And I think that at least when I
Uh-huh.
weigh out what the reasons are, I think that moral anti-realism is more plausible. And I just take that to be the negation of moral realism, that moral realism is just false. There's different ways you can construe particular anti-realist theses, but I just take that more sort of broad.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit distracted because someone was talking to me, but I heard you mention something about a robust account of IBE something. Is that correct or no?
Yeah. What I said there was just that I'm using, when I say, like, I have this sort of view of that more anti-realism is true as an inference to the best explanation. I'm using inference to the best explanation in a way that's really loose. It's not like a robust way of.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not using
I
some
think that
robust.
a lot of the explanatory virtues that are used in the IBE are not necessarily for the sake of evidential reasons, but for the sake of theoretical elegance. Think of like multiple different things, like you have linguistic accounts of simplicity, for instance, and you have different accounts of simplicity, which I don't take into consideration when I am basically trying to evaluate whether something has evidence or whether it does not have evidence. So appealing to IB standard is one thing, but is it the case that the explanatory virtues that you'd be appealing to would be evidence for the proposition that moral anti-realism is false is a separate thing that needs to be cashed out. So, for example, I think there are multiple different case scenarios where we have theories which are unable to explain something, but all the evidence favors that theory. For example, particle physics. In physics, this is like the dominant theory in physics, for example, which explains a lot of stuff. However, there is a lot of stuff which it is unable to explain. The current available theories in physics is unable to explain the true nature of dark matter. It's unable to explain like matter-antimatter symmetry. But I don't think it failing to explain these things is evidence against the position, but rather it is pointing out that the sort of proponents of these theories, or you could say hypotheses, does not have the relevant knowledge to basically be
Yeah.
utilized and basically explain that data. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I said I used the term IB relatively loosely. So I'm not talking about certain theoretical standards that you might have that favor some theory by virtue of certain heuristics that we use. I'm just talking about when given the evidence, what is the evidence,
Okay.
and where does the evidence point to? And that can be, either suggestive or or something that's like deductively true, or and
Mm-hmm.
that you can form that differently. And that's just all I mean. It's
Okay.
just something that's relatively loose in that sort of way.
Okay, so I have like a Bayesian account of evidence, obviously. I think evidence is just something which is identical to that which is probability raising, given the general definition of evidence, which is the relevant type of data or propositions, which basically converges or demonstrates why given views are factual.
Yeah,
I
and
think given
are
that
you?
account,
Yeah, to be clear,
pardon?
are you? Just to clarify, and do you mean the probability raising in sort of objective probabilities? Or are you talking about, like, were you
Objective
also
probability
thinking of?
raising. I think subjective probability raising is usually something which gets undercutted. I'm like an objectivist about probability, and all of my accounts of probability just boils back down to algorithmic accounts of probability. I think Bayesianism, for example, can be something which is explained by an algorithmic account of probability and can be modeled in a Bayesian type probability scenario. So, like, yeah. And I can explain this, I can give the mathematical evidence for this theory of probability, and that's why this is more consistent and this is more reliable. and it is, you could say, less questionable than the other theories or interpretations of probability, for example. So yeah, I can get into that
Yeah,
easily.
I'm just a bit skeptical about that, at least in the context of making certain robust metaphysical claims about how certain, for example, you can give an argument for a metaphysical claim,
Yeah.
and that argument is not going to be, let's say, empirically testable or whatever.
Yeah.
And it could be, but maybe let's suppose that it's not. Then how you measure those objective probabilities is not super clear to me. Like I
Well,
think that in those
firstly,
cases, like this is why, like for example, in the fine tuning literature, a lot of arguments that
okay.
are put into the Bayesian, notion of probability, it's always subjective probabilities,
Yeah, I'll
right?
give like an easy example, right? So, let's say we have like two hypotheses or metaphysical perspectives. One is basically a certain like external or like metaphysical realism, and the other hypothesis is negating that claim.
Yeah,
Of course, these things are not empirically; they're not something which could just empirically corroborate from the get-go like that. But what I
yeah.
would do basically, how you'd like basically demonstrate what one is more likely. First and foremost, I'll just start off with formal ontology, right? So, of course, when you're talking about metaphysics, you have to have like what is called a formal ontological theory. You're familiar with this, right?
I'm familiar with it in the context of applied ontology.
Okay, so give me your analysis of formal ontology and just
Well, I
let's
mean,
just see
you
if we're
brought
on
it
the same
up, so
page.
I mean, I don't
Okay,
know. I
sure.
mean, that's the
So
way that you
formal
want to
ontology,
analyze it. I don't know why
yeah,
I would have
yeah.
to
So
give an.
yeah. I was just curious to see if you really understand where we're on before I need to give an explanation. But with that being said, formal ontology is just reflective of the ways in which we determine and classify objects and whether they exist or do not exist, right? And so I start off from there first and foremost, and then I just basically say, okay, well, given like this account of existence, which you could say is favored by our semantical intuitions, it is the case that it is impossible for there to be a case scenario, or it is less likely rather for it to be the case that there's no objective reality or something like that, right? You can like make these sort of like claims based off like an established, you could say formal ontological theory, or you could say pre-existing background commitment in metaphysics, and then from there on, you basically work your way up, right? And then say,
I
okay,
see.
given that specific thing, which is favorable by our intuitions, then it would be the case that this metaphysical theory is more likely, even if there's
I
no
see.
empirical data to confirm it. Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's just one example.
I don't think that I like that sort of way of going about talking about these metaphysical disputes. I mean, because if that's true,
It's
then
not about what you like. It's not about like what
No,
actually
no, and the
converts to
reason
the
for that is
evidence.
because I think it holds up the debate in a way. Like if we are going to have a debate about metaethics, but that is going
Yeah.
to end up talking about what like our formal ontology is, then I don't know. I
Yeah.
just feel like that. Like I want to get to the substance of what our
No,
disagreements are,
we
and
are getting to the substance by cashing out the fundamental details which determines or which the substance is
yeah,
hinging
but
on,
that's
right?
just not the
So
way that like
we
a
have
lot
to
of
do that.
philosophers proceed. Like for
Hmm.
example, Graham Oppy's sort of naturalistic picture of causal explanations and his theory of modality renders the objective
Hmm.
probability that theism is true to zero. And you could analyze maybe his formal ontology and then
Yeah.
see whether or not you think that his formal ontology is an ontology that you think you should hold to, blah blah blah. But like if you want to measure whether
Okay.
or not theism is true, like on Oppy's theory, for example, if you had like Luke Barnes' star writing case about fine tuning, on that theory, if you're working within that formal ontology, well then the likelihood that theism is true, given that the stars write out that God exists and God wrote this sentence, then it's like zero. But
Well,
I don't know.
you're
To
not
me,
really
like
attacking what's really going on here, right? Like, I grant the idea that there's a diversity between views and formal ontologies. Like, one philosopher can have a given formal ontology which entails that theism is not true. Another person can have a formal ontology which entails trivially that theism is true, or theism is the most probable hypothesis in comparison to deism or atheism or whatever the hypothesis is. Yes, I grant this. However, the idea is simply that it appears to be the case that your objection towards this sort of, you could say, dialectical approach is based off the idea that it takes too long. It's like,
well, no, it's not
why
just
does it
that.
have to do with
It's not
all of
just that.
this?
Because
But
look,
even
if
that
your
reason by
formal
itself is not a good
ontology,
reason, right?
yeah, no. Well, no, it's in the sense that like if I want to have a conversation to you about something, but that
Okay,
leads to a different conversation that would it's on its own take like a whole bunch of time that we'll never end up getting to the original
okay.
conversation. And I don't know, at least pragmatically, that's the point about it was just a pragmatic point about how the discussion work out.
But
But
the
the second
pragmatic
thing
point
is
is
no,
not
the second
is not
thing is
relevant.
before you talk, the second thing is
Okay, gotcha.
that if we're starting off with what our formal ontology is, that isn't clear to me because presumably we already have a disagreement about what exists. And if you're starting off with the formal ontology about what actually exists given your ontology, well then I mean that's the very thing that we're going to have a dispute about. What exists?
No,
You can
yeah,
represent
that's a
that in a way
confusion.
formally,
That's a
sure.
confusion.
You
Hold
know,
on. Yeah,
you
that's a
can
massive
represent that, but
confusion. The second
presumably
point
like
is
it's going to rest on like what the arguments are
gotcha.
in favor of thinking that that thing should be a part of your formal ontology.
So firstly, the second point is a massive confusion. I actually expected better from you on that point. So just the first part, if you want to make the pragmatic objection that it takes too long, I don't know if we get
It's not
into
like an
this. I
objection.
mean,
It's just a
wait, hold
pragmatic
on,
kind of.
because remember you're complaining about me
No, but
interrupting your
you're
point,
like
so I expect common
construing it
courtesy.
incorrect.
Wait, just give me 1 second. Just hold on there a second. Right. So just the first point you mentioned about the pragmatic objection. No, it takes too long, and I don't know if to get into all of this. I mean, given this sort of like approach or this objection you're given, then it's likely to be the case that we should approach philosophical disputes in the same way the average layman approaches such. The average layman is not going to go into these sort of like different metaphysical perspectives and so forth. They just ask like 1 or 2 questions like, oh, do you think this is objectively true, yes or no, or something like that, and like basically just appeal to intuitions or do something very fundamental and basic, right? The average layman, if they're to be talking about metaphysics or metaethics or God's existence, their arguments are going to be much more simplified. It's going to be something which touches onto much less concepts, much less, you could say, roots in these disputes than, for example, when philosophers or philosopher
No,
debaters who
philosophers
studies
do
the
the thing
field.
that I'm
Yeah,
talking
so
about.
hold on, but
There's like
nonetheless, hold on,
quotes that they
but
have
nonetheless,
like
hold on,
within papers.
just one
So
second,
what you
hold
said
on,
just
just
isn't
one
true.
second.
It just
Wait,
isn't true.
you're scared
It's
to let me
false.
finish a sentence. What's going on?
I'm
It's
not scared.
almost
Go
as if
ahead.
you know the
But it's
fact
false.
you made a
But
dumb
go ahead.
fucking point and you're
Go
interrupting
ahead.
me right now. Yeah, I'm
Wait, go
gonna
ahead.
finish. Yeah, I
Go ahead.
know. You got you. So just
Yeah, go ahead. Stop talking.
you're
Go
saying you
ahead.
tell me to go ahead, but you're still talking.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
here's the point I'm just
I'm
going to be
waiting,
making
bro.
before
You
you're
stop
so
fucking
intimidated.
rambling.
Okay, so what I was going to
Stop
be, why are
rambling.
you
Just
still
go
talking?
ahead.
Just relax. I'm talking. So to make the point that you're scared for me to finish, by the way, okay, given your analysis or your objection, right, it is the case that the average layman has a much better pragmatically, you could say, pragmatic approach towards
That's
philosophical
not true.
disputations
That's
than
not true.
philosophers because it is more simplified. Hold on, I'm
That's
not
not
saying
true.
you're saying this. I'm saying this is an entailment of what you're saying, but you're
Yeah,
not
I
even
understand that's
tracking
not
the
true.
entailment. But
That's not
again,
true.
for the second point,
That's
you're
not true.
still interrupting. What's going on? You're
Well, because
shaking
you're
your
saying
pants
like
right now.
things that
Now
are
it's
false.
actually crazy. Hold on. So I'm going to finish the other point, though, because you made 2 points. You made two really retarded points. The second point you mentioned is simply that, oh, well, the thing you're disagreeing on is what exists. And so it is the case that if you're going to be debating on formal ontology, dog, first and foremost, you just straw man the fuck out of formal ontology. Formal ontology is not just making a claim on what exists. It's not talking about what exists. It's talking about the conditions which determines existence, dumb fuck. So you just straw man, misinterpreted the whole concept of what I was talking about, and basically did not even attack jack shit of my point. So what I'm telling
Yeah,
you
that
here
my
is
point
simply
still
that
stands even
yes,
under that rule.
and
So
you're still panicking. What's going on? So
well,
again,
it's because
regarding
you
the
said something that
examples you
was
have
false,
given,
and I'm
and you're
correcting
still
you. I'm
interrupting,
correcting you
and
because
you're
you said
still
something false.
interrupting.
You know, it's like
You
something a
didn't
teacher
correct
does
me.
to a
You made an
student.
incorrect
I'm
point, and
doing
I
what a
corrected
teacher
you.
does to a
Sorry.
student who
Are you doing
doesn't
this
learn.
thing, or is the thing
It's
like you're
okay.
talking over the
Keep it.
person
Go
who's
ahead. Go
continuing?
ahead.
He's
I'll
going to
teach you
be
after you you finish
dominant.
what you're saying.
You're going to teach
Go
me
ahead.
what? How to be retarded?
Go
I
ahead.
don't want that lesson, by the way. I don't want
Yeah,
the
but you're
lesson on how
getting
to
one
be
anyway.
retarded and to
It's
make
okay.
incorrect
Even if
points.
you don't
Okay,
want it, you're
just
still
to keep
getting
you
it.
back on track. Just to keep you back on track, because I don't know what trying to be rhetorically dominant. You're getting rhetorically blown the fuck out right now.
Yeah, I
Again,
don't care
to
about
address the
rhetoric.
last
I don't
point.
care about
Okay,
that. I care about what you have to
you
say
stated.
philosophically. That's what
Why are
matters
you
to me.
rambling, dog? Why do you keep on interrupting?
Well, it's
So,
because
anyways,
you're making a point and then you want to continue, but I'm
that
not
was a
just going to let
rhetorical
that
question.
slide. You know, I'm not
That
just
was
going
a
to let you make
rhetorical
a point
question,
and then
by the way, just to
continue.
be clear.
You know.
And you're still talking, and he's still talking,
Yeah, I
and
am
he's
still
still
talking.
yelling.
Nice. You made an
Yeah,
observation. You made an
I'm still
observation.
talking.
You
I'm
could
still talking, and
understand.
you're still
You could
yapping,
understand that
and
I'm
you're still
talking.
interrupting,
Yes, when it lights
and
up
you're
green,
still
that means that
interrupting.
I'm
Wow,
speaking.
look at this
It
guy.
means
He's
that you're
so
being taught.
scared
You're
for me to
getting
finish
another
his
lesson
sentence.
from me. That's what it
You know,
means.
you get another. That's dog. You literally
Yes.
got the
Okay.
whole
You're
point
repeating what
wrong
I'm
about
saying because
formal
you have
ontology. What are
nothing
you
to
talking
say.
about, bro?
Say something
What are you
substantive.
talking about? He's so
I don't care about
scared.
this
Look at him.
rhetorical stuff. I
So
literally don't
people are
care.
looking at this
Fallengod.
conversation and would get the
Why do
impression
I
that
care
you're
about what
scared for me to
people
finish a
think? I
sentence.
care about what you think. I care about what
I'm
substance
going
you
to
have to
basically
bring to the
show you as
table.
to why you're incorrect on the point, and you're still talking, bro.
No,
If you
you're
do
well.
not care about what people
How can
think,
you show me
why do
how
you
I'm
feel the
incorrect when you
need to?
keep saying things
Why
that are
do you
false?
feel the need to make
If
a
someone
performative
keeps saying
outrage?
things that are
You're having a
false,
performative
they can't
outrage right
correct
now.
them.
You're
You
having
can't
a
correct me about
meltdown.
what things I'm
Relax.
saying if everything that you're
Fallengod,
saying is
calm
false.
down. I'm not done yet. Okay?
Yeah.
So, the second point, okay, you stated originally in this conversation when I asked you, what's your assessment of formal ontology? You said, oh, but you brought up the term, so let's just go into your definition.
Yeah.
Okay, dumb fuck.
It's
Okay,
like
dumb fuck.
it's
Now
like
try.
Like,
I
no
want you to
shit.
track what's going
No
on.
shit.
I want you to track what's going on. Look at him interrupting again. The next time you interrupt, I'm going to mute you same time, okay? So just to be clear on this, right?
Are you scared?
You say you're going to go under my
Apollo, don't be
analysis,
scared.
my assessment of formal ontology. Look at this guy still interrupted. It's crazy. And given my assessment of formal ontology, it would be the case that you are not attacking jack shit because you're telling me that they have a disagreement on what exists. Having a disagreement on what exists is not having a disagreement on formal ontology, which you have signed off on given my own definition. You signed off on my definition of formal ontology, and then
but
when
I
you're
said
basically trying
still
to point
true.
out,
Okay.
and the monkey is still aping out in the background. That's crazy. And then when
Is
you're
that
trying to
like your
point
family in
out
the
that
background? Is
there
that
would
what
be
you're
some
talking about?
sort of
I couldn't hear though. Maybe you could come closer to the mic.
non-productive, and you're still talking, Fallengod. Do you have autism or
And you're
something?
still making observations
Are
that
you
a
on your
kindergartner
meds?
can make.
Are you on your
Okay.
meds? Okay, yeah, shut the fuck up, dude. So, anyways, you can't be signing off on my definition of formal ontology. And then when
Well,
you're
yeah, I
trying to
can, and I
attack,
can tell you
and
why.
when you're trying to attack the redundancy and the triviality of talking about formal ontology in these conversations, you're using a different concept of formal ontology. In other words, you're not even be attacking my concept. You're not even be attacking my point. You're not even be attacking my arguments. And so I'm pointing out to you here that number one, given the philosophical definition of formal ontology, you're dead wrong in less than 10 seconds. Given the fact you agreed with my definition of formal ontology, which is, by the way, is the general philosophical definition, it would be the case that you're talking nothing. You're not saying anything of substance, dog. You can respond now. You can talk now, buddy. Go, bitch boy.
Yeah, I mean, what you said was just false. I mean, I don't know. Like, am I going to keep addressing falsehoods? I mean, sure. You said, look, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but I heard you say that by formal ontology, what you meant was a system of talking about the conditions for which for how things exist. You know what the conditions are for things to exist, and that's the way that you characterize formal ontology. Is that correct or incorrect? If it's incorrect, you can tell me what the correct way is, so that we don't have to go on this ramble, and I can attack that characterization.
So you're claiming that I was incorrect, and are you asking me a question?
No.
Interesting.
I'm asking you a question. That's what it was.
Asking me a question is not
Yeah, wait, what's the
demonstrating that I
answer?
was incorrect.
Enough with the rhetorical games. What's the
I'm
answer?
waiting for you to actually address the point I made previously.
Yeah. But
You
for me to
stated in the
address the
middle of my
point,
speech.
look,
You
Apollo,
said in the midst of my speech. So wait, for you to
presumably, if
debunk
you
my
care about
claim,
what you
for you to
said,
debunk my
I have to
claim,
understand
it
what you're
hinges on
saying.
my answer
If
to your
I'm asking you a
question.
question for
So your
clarity, you
debunk is
presumably would want to tell
totally
me
at the
so that I
mercy
can
of my
address what
response to
you're
your
saying.
question. Is that what you're telling
There's
me?
no way that you would be scared
How
enough
are you
that
going
you
to make
wouldn't
the
even
claim
answer a
that I was
question of
incorrect in the
clarity so
conversation
that I
and
can
that you're going
address
to
your
correct
point.
me and then ask me a question afterwards of giving me the facts, which should actually make it the case that I'm incorrect in the matter?
Yeah, I'm being bad faith because I want to clarify your position
You're
to be
being
able to
bad
address it
faith by
correctly.
literally
Okay.
dodging your burden right now.
Yeah,
You made
and
the
I
claim
want
I
to
was
fulfill it.
incorrect.
I want to
Tell me
fulfill it,
which
and the
claim
way
was
that I can
incorrect.
fulfill it is
Tell
by
me
being
which claim was
accurate with
incorrect.
what you're saying.
Tell me which claim was incorrect. Go for it. Which claim did I make was incorrect?
Wait, I didn't say that a claim that you made was
You said you're
incorrect.
going to
I was
teach
I was
me.
saying, well,
You
oh
said you're
yeah,
going to lecture me on
yeah,
something.
well,
You said I
no,
was making incorrect points.
yeah.
Now you're
Well,
going to change up your.
no.
Now you're going to
Look,
change up your claims. You
I
dishonest
did say that
scumbag.
you said false things. That's true.
Why are you
I did say
stumbling
that you
so
said
much? Are you
false things.
nervous right now? Are you unconfident in the conversation?
Wait, no. Why would I be nervous? Like, what the fuck?
You
You're like
sound
this
nervous
fucking
right
dumbass
now. You
dude
sound
on
nervous
Discord.
right now. And if I were you, I'd be very nervous if I realized I'm getting destroyed completely in this conversation, which you thought you knew jack shit about. So again, I'm going
Wait,
to ask you
why
one
would
more
I be
time.
nervous? Wait, why would
Which
I be
claim, before
nervous,
you meant to
Apollo?
debate
You think
me,
I'm
before
scared of
you meant to
people on
debate me
fucking
whether or not you're
Discord?
nervous, I
You
want you to
think I'm
focus
fucking
on the substance here.
okay? So
How
then
is it the
don't bring
case
it
that
up,
my
you fucking
claims are
bitch boy.
correct?
Don't bring it up, bitch
And
boy.
look at this
Shut the
guy
fuck
trying to
up.
pad.
Shut the fuck up,
You're
dumbass.
trying to pack
You
with
think
this
that I'm
stutter.
fucking
Don't,
scared of
please don't
you?
even try this. I'm gonna get
You're
blown up
retarded
in
as
my
shit.
head.
You think I'm fucking scared of you?
Please relax,
I'd beat the
Mexican.
fuck
Okay,
out of
so I'm
you if
going
I
to
fucking
address my
saw you.
point. I
Oh, well, shut
want
the
you to
fuck up.
address
I'd
my
pick you up
point,
and
bitch
fuck you.
boy. Focus up,
I'd pick you
focus
up
up,
and
black
fucking
dog. I
beat the
want
shit out
you
of
to
you,
address
bro.
the points here. How is it
Come
the
on, dog.
case
Don't even do
that
that
my
shit, man.
claims are incorrect? Do we
Don't
agree,
even do
yes or
that shit,
no, that my
Apollo.
points are
I'd
correct?
pick you up and fuck
Correct.
the fuck
Answer
up,
the
bitch.
question, bitch
You got
boy.
you got
Answer
a
the
fucking
question,
small
bitch
frame,
boy.
bitch.
Oh
Shut the
no,
fuck
look at
up.
him. He's squirming away,
Yeah, so
sprinting up in
next
the
time
actual
don't say I'm
substance
fucking
here.
scared of you, you
Answer the
dumbass.
question. Are they
Hey, yeah.
correct? Yes
Hey,
or no,
okay.
bitch boy?
Hey,
Stop
bitch.
stuttering, you
Hey, bitch.
moron. Answer my
Hey,
question.
bitch. You
Were they
understand that I'm
correct?
not
Yes or
scared of you, right?
no?
You better
Hey,
Were
stop
bitch.
they
it, Apollo.
correct?
He's
Yes
gonna
or
pick you
Shut
up
the
no?
and
fuck
slam
up,
you on
bitch
your
You're
boy.
dick.
dodging right now. We're getting bitched up in this conversation. We're getting
Exactly.
cock
Shut the
slapped right
fuck
now,
up.
unironically. I'm going to ask you one more time. Were my claims correct? Yes or no? Do you concede to my
Yeah,
claims
yeah.
being
Well,
correct?
no, the claim
Yes, you
about
do.
there being an
No,
entail.
which one is it, retard? Yes or
I,
no? Yes or no? Which
yeah,
one
I'm
is it?
Let
answering.
him talk. Let him
I'm
talk.
answering.
Let him talk.
You sound like
Yeah.
Jason Voorhees
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
So the entailment,
Yeah,
at
answer
my
my point,
view,
retard.
means
Yes or
that
no? Were
the
they
lay
correct?
people would say that, well, that the lay people's views
You
or
sound
way
so
of
confused.
analyzing certain philosophical discourse is simpler and better.
Do you
It's
understand
not
the
an entailment
distinction
from what I
between someone
said,
disagreeing on
because
what
that would
exists
depend
and
upon
disagreeing on
certain
what
empirical
determines
facts that
existence?
hold, which I made no claim of. So that's one thing that you said that was
Answer
false.
my question. Answer my question. Do you understand the massive distinction, you dumb fuck, between what
Yeah, wait,
determines
wait,
existence,
before I answer
non-existence,
that question,
and
do you
disagreeing on
understand
what
that I
exists?
already
Yes or
answered
no?
the first question you
Do
made?
you agree?
You said you
Do you
concede
understand
that
the
what I
distinction?
said was that I
What
said
am I
a
going to be
false thing. What was
conceding
the
on,
false thing
retard?
that
You
I
were
said?
dead wrong on the
What was
point.
the false
You
thing that
try
I
to
said?
make
What was the
the
incorrect
formal
thing
ontology
that
and
I
the
said?
disagreement about
I
what
gave you.
exists.
I just
When
told
people
you
disagree
what
on
one of
formal
them was.
ontology, they're not merely
I
disagreeing on
just
what
told you what
exists,
one of
retard.
those things was.
You stated in your response to my point that if we have two philosophers who have a disagreement in formal ontology, they'll be disagreeing on what exists, which is the same topic that's being debated on. You dumb fuck retard, you dumb low IQ ape. That's not what formal ontology disagreements are about, you retard. It's not disagreements about what exists, it's disagreements on the conditions which determines what
Okay, yeah,
exists.
yeah, yeah.
You can
That's
have
fine.
two
Okay, so now
persons,
you cleared
wait,
it
shut
up.
up, babe, I'm still
Okay, you
talking.
finally
Okay,
answered
bitch
the
boy. You
original
can have
question
two
of clarity
persons.
that I had. I
Just relax,
originally
bitch
asked the
boy.
question of
You can have
clarity
two
as to
Let
like,
persons
what did
Fallen
you mean
talk.
by
Let
disagreeing
Fallen
formal
talk.
ontology?
have disagreeing perspectives on
Yeah,
formal
okay.
ontology.
So if it's
So you
disagreements
agree with
about
me?
what
So you agree
conditions
with
are
me?
required
Wait,
or
so you
what
agree
the
with me?
conditions for
Wait, so you agree
existence
with me?
are,
Yes or no? Do you agree
are
with
you
me? Yes or no?
when
One
you
dot.
say the
Fallen
conditions for existence,
That's another
are you
dot.
talking
Yes
about
or no? Do you
existence
agree with
like
me?
conditions in
talk.
the sense that, you know, you and disputes about like meta ontology? Are you talking about those conditions?
What?
Or are you talking about conditions about what
How
exists
are you still
and we're
confused about my
assuming
point?
facts about meta
Are you
ontology?
stupid? Should I have to break it
I'm
down
asking you a
further?
question. I'm asking you a
You're
question.
asking me a question because you're confused about the basic
No, no,
concept,
I'm
which I've
asking you a
clarified several
question because
times.
yeah, no,
Okay,
I'm
I'm going to
asking you a
clarify
question
for
so that
you.
I
For the
can
guy who
progress the
claimed he's going to
conversation.
lecture me and teach me something,
Presumably, we
you're asking
want
me
to, you
so
know, we
many
want to
questions
get to
to
a
learn
point
so
that's
much
like
more things in this
substantive.
conversation. I'm going to
Wait.
clarify for you,
Presumably,
bitch
we
boy.
want to get
What
to
I'm
a point
talking about,
where the conversation is
relax.
productive
I'm
and
going to
there's
try to
substance
clarify
on
for
the
you.
table.
Weren't you begging for
Like, come
clarification,
on,
retard?
man.
I'm going to give you the clarification you're
Wait,
begging
can we
for.
get to a
So
point
here's
where
the
there's like
clarification.
substance?
Oh, look at this guy begging on his knees for clarification, but proceeding to interrupt his opponent's attempt to
Yeah,
clarify the
yeah.
points he's
It's
begging
funny that
for.
you
It's
say
crazy.
begging on his
I'm
knees
going to
for
give the clarification on the
clarification when
table
you say,
while you pipe
"Oh,
down for a
like
second, like the
you're
bitch boy you
failing to
are,
answer, you're
and
failing
actually
to
just listen
understand."
and
Okay,
take
if
notes.
I'm failing to
And he's still
understand, then
going.
obviously
And he's still
you think that
going.
I
And he's
should
still
get clear on what
going.
you're saying.
And he's
So
still
you
going.
can't just fucking have this
And
like
he's still
dumbass double
going.
standard.
And he's still going. It's a matter of the fact
Yeah,
that
and
you're
you can
barely
still like
understanding
find
because
you
you have
can
an
see,
IQ,
yes, when
dog.
I
It's not a matter
speak,
of
it
communication
lights
that
up
you're enlightened.
green. When
So I'm
I
going to
speak, it
clarify
lights
this
up
for you
green.
one more time, okay? When I'm talking about formal ontology,
Oh my
what I'm
god.
talking about
Yeah,
there
you're talking about
are
the
the relevant
conditions.
conditions, and you're crashing out. You're crashing out
I'm crashing out
mid-sentence.
by
I'm going to
answering.
clarify the
I
same thing
fucking
you're asking for
precog what the fuck you
clarification
just
for.
said, you dumbass. But I'm crashing
Dog, you're
out.
literally so
I precog
autistic you
what the
can't
fuck
even
you just said,
understand
but I'm
basic
crashing
sentences.
out.
It's
Can
actually
you guys
crazy to
fucking?
me.
It's like
It's actually
this fucking dude
crazy
is
to
so
me, dog.
stupid.
You know what's funny? I'm
I'm like
understanding the
fucking,
points you're making despite the fact you're
yeah,
stuttering
I'm
over
like
every
fucking
single word you're making
TCM
in this
Naruto
conversation, dog.
against
It's
fucking
actually so hilarious
against
how the guy who has a stutter is
the
trying to
right
be rhetorical.
Kage,
It's
and then
actually
he
so
fucking
hilarious how
finally,
the guy is
you
trying to
know,
be the
gives in
chore.
split
It's
by
trying
the
to be
right
rhetorically
Kage. Come on.
persuasive in this conversation.
You know,
Dog,
I put
everyone
it
is
in
looking at this
terms. I
debate
put
right
it in
now
terms that
and
you
like,
could
God damn
understand.
it, bro. Apollo is bitch slapping the fuck out of this guy. No one's gonna look at this conversation after this and think Fallengod is a good debater because guess what? You're confused on basic concepts, you're rhetorically inept, and also you're mentally inept to the point you're so autistic that you interrupt every single point in my conversation. So I'm gonna ask you one more time.
Yes,
What
I
part of
was
my previous
interrupting, but you
sentence
were the
is
one that was
something
so
you're
cordial
interrupting the
that
whole time, by the way,
you never
while I'm
uttered a
crying
word when
about
I was
interruptions?
speaking.
Calling it
Yes,
common
okay.
courtesy. Yeah,
Well,
that's
you
actually that's
cannot
actually
complain
so
about
crazy. You
interruptions. You're
cried
like
and
the
you're
fucking
whining
king of
about being
interrupting
interrupted your
people when
points
you're
with my
scared.
interruptions,
Like you
and you
cannot do that.
proceeded to interrupt my
You think
point
you're
the
the king of
entirety of the
debater. You're the
conversation.
king of
Dog,
fucking
this is such a
interrupting
bad
people
look.
because you're fucking
This is
scared.
actually such a bad look for you, bro. I'm actually being dead serious. Okay, now I'm going to
I
try to
don't care if
clarify
why
the
the
same
fuck
thing,
would
and you're
I care
still
if you're
going,
being dead
and you're
serious or
still
not?
going.
Is Zach supposed to like give me some
You're
sort of
still going. This is
phenomenological
actually
state?
embarrassing,
Like I
dog.
don't care.
You don't
What
care
like
about interrupting my point?
is the only thing that you have to say is this guy still going? This guy can
It's
still.
another dodge. That's
There's
another
no way
dodge,
that
by
you
the way.
can do that.
Okay.
It's just so
That's
fucking
another
stupid.
dodge, bro.
Is that
So I'm
it?
gonna
Like
actually just my points
there's
now.
like no substance.
And by the way, any person who thinks this guy is going to mic back for afterwards, including that Hal guy, by the way. So just to be clear, Fallengod, I want you to basically address my points. Do you acknowledge that when you're talking about disagreements about what exists, do you acknowledge that such disagreement does does not capture the debates in formal ontology? Yes or no?
It can. I don't see why it couldn't. If you're talking about what exists, presumably you want to talk
No,
about what
not a matter
conditions
if
are
it
required for
can.
things to
Does it
exist.
capture this debate? Yes or no? Does it
It
capture the
can.
conversation?
It can.
Not a yes or no. Does it?
I'm telling you, it can. It's not a yes or no question, you dumbass.
It's a yes or no
If
question.
you
By the
don't
way.
understand the
It
fact
is a
that
yes or no
that
question.
it
Look
can
at this
is a
guy
accurate, is a
dodging
good
the
response,
binary question.
and that just goes
You're
to show
just
that you're
dodging,
fucking
bro. Just
conceptually and mentally
prevarication with
inept.
every single question I'm
You're
asking
fucking
because you know
stupid.
for a fact
You're
you're just
inept.
going to put on display
You're
right
inept
now.
that
You're going to
you don't
expose right now,
understand that
bro.
certain questions can be
You
answered
don't
without
even understand what formal
with an
ontology even
answer that
is.
isn't yes or no.
Show
You
you. If I
fail to
show you the
understand that.
definition
How
of
can you
formal
not see
ontology,
that, Apollo? You're
would you
the
agree that
mighty
the primary
Apollo who
disagreement
has
with
all this
formal ontology is not
rhetorical
about what
baggage
exists?
and
Do you
is
agree with this?
insanely
In
intellectually
the context of
superior
this
to everyone else, but you
conversation,
can't even understand
in the
that certain
context of
questions
this
can't be answered with
conversation,
a yes or no.
Falling God,
Will it
just
talk
relax.
about the
Okay, just
conditions
listen
of
to what my
existence?
point is.
It
Listen
can.
to what my
Well, you can't
point
just say
is,
it
Falling
can't
God.
because then I
Saying it
can't
can
get this
is not
rhetorical
an actual
Trump
relevant
on you.
response to my
Like I
question.
don't give a
Okay,
shit, dog.
what I'm telling you here is in the context of this conversation, right? When I defined the formal ontology, which you signed off on, you signed up on my definition because you
Yeah,
realized
and
you
then you
couldn't even
failed to
define the
realize that
concept.
what I
Yeah, you
said was
understand that given
still
that
untrue,
definition, it has
and
no
what you said was
relevancy
false.
to debates about what exists. You understand this, right?
I
He's
didn't
so
hear you what you said.
stun-locked. He's
No,
so
I didn't hear what
stun-locked.
you
I'm
said
gonna
because I
ask you
was
one more
ignoring
time.
you.
Okay, I'm gonna do this one more time. Could you give me my definition of formal ontology in this conversation? Just reproduce the definition for the audience. Let's see if you
Well, you
actually
didn't give a
remember the
strict
definition.
definition. You just said it
I
talks about the
want you to give
conditions
me
for which
my
things exist.
definition in this conversation, which you signed off on.
I just
Don't
gave it.
dodge.
I just gave it.
What was the definition?
You said it was the condition. You talk about the conditions for which things exist.
Okay, so you understand now that's different from what the
Okay. So
fucking
now
bullshit
you know
claim
that
you
I
made.
fucking understand. So
Oh
now
wait,
you
hold
like
on. So
you spent all this time
congratulations,
saying that I didn't
congratulations, Fallen
understand.
God. You're
You
able
spent the last
properly.
10
You're able to
minutes saying
properly
that I
Let
didn't
remember
let
the
Fallen
understand.
definition.
talk. Let
Now, do you
Fallen
Finally, when
talk.
acknowledge
you
that
let me
given that
speak,
definition
you
of
finally
formal ontology,
understand
it is
that
the
I
case
had
that
clarity
what
on what you
you're
said, and you
talking
were
about
just being
would
bad
not be
faith, saying that I
Let
didn't
Fallen
understand.
God talk.
do you acknowledge this? Given that definition, it wouldn't be about what exists. It wouldn't be debates about what exists. In reality, it's debates about the conditions for existence. So, in other words, it's debates about the conceptual assessments of existence concept, not about the things which satisfies the concept of existence, retard. So, given the definition you signed off on, that's different from your
Yeah,
objection
no, but
and what you
wait, do you
objection
see
was.
how debates about what
Do you
exists
see how
will
retarded
also
you are currently
capture
by just
facts
not
about what
tracking the point?
conditions are required for things to exist, or what
Do you
conditions are
understand how
required for
debating about conditions
existence?
for what exists is not going to be the same as debating about what in fact exists in reality? Yes or no?
Do you understand that what I said isn't
Is
just
there
limited
a
to that?
difference? Yes or no? Don't ask
Yes,
me a
and what I
question,
said
ask my
isn't just
question,
limited to
retard.
that.
Wait, hold on. Yes or no?
I
Do you
just
agree that
answered.
given that definition, it does not include the concept of debate about what exists? Do you agree with this?
Uh, I mean, it can.
The answer is no, retard. It does not. It's not talking about what in fact exists. It's talking about the conceptual assessments of existence. Retard. I can give you a pretty simple example, dog. So, for example, if I debate someone about, like, let's say, the definitions or the conditions of personal identity, they're not even debating about whether or not personal identity exists, right? For example, someone can be an animalist about personal identity, or someone can hold like a psychological continuity view of personal identity. However, it is not the case that when these two persons are debating about their different accounts of personal identity, they're having some sort of disagreement on whether or not this thing exists. They're debating about the concept of this condition or the conditions for the concept. So you're just completely lost in the conversation, bro. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, they would be disputing about what exists in the sense that if someone's an animalist, they would say it isn't the case that there exists people that have personal identity that's identical or is representative of animalist, conceptions of what personal identity is. It's the same way that people who believe in the A theory of time think that there isn't, let's say, for example, presentists. They don't think that four-dimensionalism is true. So therefore, they don't think that there is a universe that's four-dimensional in the way that people
I'm
like
not sure if you
eternalists want to
understand
say
how
that
you
there
conceded
is.
to my point, by
So
the
they
way.
would say
I'm
that
not sure
it
if you
doesn't,
understand how you conceded
that
to my
thing doesn't
point.
exist.
I'll
They would say that
explain.
there is a
I'll
dispute
explain how you
about that
conceded,
in
okay?
that regard.
Yeah, they're
They
disputing
think that
about the
time doesn't exist
concept.
in that way. So what you just said was just false, and I
Holy
just
fucking
gave you two
shit.
examples of how that
Oh
was
God, are
false.
you?
I just gave you two
Just because
examples of
it is
how
the
what you
case,
just said was false.
just because it
Look,
is the
it's okay.
case that debating
Look,
about
I
what
have to
exists
go,
is
but
compatible with the
I just
definition,
showed you two
doesn't
ways
mean
in
it is
which
a
that was
part
just
of the
false.
definition.
And look, it's okay.
Dog, do
Look,
you
Apollo,
understand that just
I'm
because
gonna leave,
your
but I'm gonna
specific
tell you, look,
analysis is
it's okay,
compatible with
and you don't
mine,
have
it
to
doesn't mean
cry
it
when
is
you
part
shower
of
at
my
night before
analysis,
you go
bro.
to sleep, when you pray
And he's still
for your
yapping.
false god. Look, just remember me, okay? Just remember me,
Yep,
and,
yep,
and
yep,
just
yep,
remember
yep.
that it's
I now
okay.
got you. Now you
It's
should
okay.
explain this.
It's okay.
Remember
You have
Fallen,
multiple layers
pendejo.
that
Oh,
are
it's
obviously
not
false.
possible.
It's okay.
He's still, yeah, oh my
Remember
god, he's still
Fallen,
going.
pendejo.
He's still
All
going.
right.
Oh my god. Anyways, just to be clear in a couple of things, your whole response is basically you stating that it is possible. It can be the case that you're debating about the. Yeah, of course it can be the case. You dumb fucking moron. That's not the disagreement here. But of course, a compatibility between your assessment and my definition, which is what the whole concept of formal intelligence is hinged on in this conversation, doesn't automatically mean that your assessment is relevant to my definition. For example, I can have a definition of bachelor, which is an unmarried man, for example, and it is compatible with that definition. That there's someone out there whose name is
Yeah,
John
Fallen
who
ran.
satisfies the conditions of being a bachelor. However, it's not the case that
Coward.
given the definition of a bachelor, it's even relevant to any such person, right? Pointing out compatibility between whatever the fuck you said and whatever my definition is, which you signed off on, is not the same as you establishing the relevancy, dog. It truly is not the same thing. Who's that person in the background moaning, bro? Who's that person?
Yeah, that guy is like really weird. You gotta stop moaning, dude. Like,
Is that guy named Kyotos?
Who's that guy?
Anyways, hey,
Wow.
this is a great time to make an announcement. My name is Kyotos. I'll be hosting the first ultimate
Shut
debate.
your
on
bitch
YouTube.
ass up, nigga.
We have
Hey,
been
who
added
are
to our
you, bro?
first card.
Hey, Kyotos, we don't know you, bro. Stop talking, bro.
Save the ad.
Apollo, so I have a
If
few
you make
questions.
it onto the main event, I will be supplying you with money.
Yeah,
and
Paulo
time.
is self-advertising. Can we get a ban?
My name is
Oh, bro,
my name
he
is Dana
self-advertising, ban him.
Kyotos. I'm the commissioner
Ban
of the
him. Ban him,
UDC.
chat.
Please hit
Ban
me
him.
up.
So is the conversation
ban him.
finished? Anyone who
Yeah.
believes that Fallengod for some reason was winning can mic up any fucking time, or they get banned from the server
But
instantly.
Apollo, what was your
Apollo.
I want to mic
buddy.
up. Let's go. Because I think Fallengod is finished with the conversation.
Apollo.
We can just end the recording, by the way. Hold on,
Anyways,
let me-
yeah, I'm
Apollo.
just gonna introduce. I'm
One
just gonna
second.
introduce myself real quick. What's up, y'all?